Hello and welcome to the next part of the lesson, the address from class 11 Hornbill book. Now in the first part of the lesson of the video, we had seen that the narrator, Mrs. S's daughter, had gone to a particular address, 46 Marconi Street. But the lady who had opened the door behaved in such a manner as if she had never seen the girl. For once the girl was also confused whether she was at the wrong address. This address her mother had told her long before the war had started. But then suddenly the girl sees something. The lady was wearing a green cardigan which had wooden buttons. This was the same cardigan which belonged to the narrator's mother. So this proved that the narrator was 100% at the right address. And when the woman sees the girl staring at the cardigan, she understands that the girl has come to know the truth. She was at the right address. But the lady had closed the door at her face and had left the narrator standing on the stairs. After this, the narrator goes back to catch the train, remembering the days of the past when she had first met this lady, when she had first heard about this lady, how her mother had told her that this lady was an old acquaintance, an old friend, and had renewed her acquaintance. Why? Because she wanted to help them in the hour of need. The lady was carrying all the valuables of their home to her house for safe keeping. And that is when her mother had told her the particular address in Marconi Street, number 46. Now, after the war had got over, the narrator for some time did not think about the things, the valuables which were kept at this particular address, because there was so many things to forget, there were so many things to fight back, the memories of the war. But finally, when the days started to get better, when the color of the bread changed, in other words, when the author was getting proper food after the war, when she was getting a proper bed, when she was able to look out of the window without getting threatened, that is when she remembers all those things which were kept at this address. She longed to see them, touch them, remember them, because those things were the only way she could remember her mother and her family member. Obviously, she had lost them in the war. So that is why these things became even more important for her. So after her first visit in vain to Mrs. Dorling's house, she decided to try for the second time, try to get her things back. But this time, the lady did not open the door. Mrs. Dorling did not open the door. It was Mrs. Dorling's daughter. And unlike her mother, the daughter invited the narrator inside the house. As Mrs. Dorling was not available at that point of time, she asked the narrator, or the narrator agreed to wait for her in the house. Now the narrator followed the girl along the passage, and she could see so many things which were hers hanging everywhere. Like, for example, the old-fashioned iron Hanukkah, which is a candle holder. And the narrator remembers that they never used to use all these stuff when she was at home. So there were many things which were there in the room, and that is why the narrator felt that she was in a room she knew and did not know. Now what does it mean? Because all the things in the room were of the narrator, she felt as if she was in the old room of her house. But then the way the things were not kept properly, were mismanaged, were thrown here and there, she was in a room she didn't know. So this is the meaning of this line. I was in a room I knew and did not know. So the things were her, but in unfamiliar circumstances, unfamiliar way they were kept and used. So the girl was horrified. All her memories which she had regarding these things. Now, there was a poem in class 10, the ball poem. The ball was not just a toy. It was something which held all his memories. Similarly, all these things were not just things. They were a source of memory for this girl. But now the memory is distorted. The things were kept in a tasteless way. Okay, and the room was giving her a very muggy smell. The tablecloth, the silver cutlery, even the still life showing the apple on the tin plate, all belonged to her, but they were not kept properly. So obviously the narrator was very, very horrified. The narrator was keenly observing the girl, who had a broad back similar to that of Mrs. Dorling. The girl was placing teacups for tea to be served. She was pouring tea from a white teapot which had gold border on the lid, and then she took out some spoons from the box. All this crockery and cutlery belonged to the narrator's family. But the girl obviously was not aware of this fact, and she cracked a joke about eating dinner in those antique plates. Now the narrator tried to trace a burn mark on the tablecloth, and the narrator indirectly hinted to the girl that they missed things which are either missing from their original place or have been loaned to somebody. So indirectly, the narrator tried to point out that she missed all her things. And secondly, people do not value something till you have it. You only start to value it once you lose it. Okay, so it was too much for the narrator to handle, the way the things were kept, the way all her memories were in a distorted manner. The sweet memories which were attached to these things were now destroyed because of the way they were being used and mishandled. So before the girl could take out the silver spoon and cutlery, the narrator jumped up and walked down the passage because she could not handle it anymore. It was not easy for her to see all those things. So the narrator remembers the time when her mother was alive, and the narrator was at home, either bored or ill. Her mother asked her to polish the silver cutlery. She was surprised to hear that the cutlery that they were using was made of silver, and even Mrs. Dorling's daughter was surprised to hear that they were using silver cutlery for everyday eating. So the narrator decided, as I said, she jumped up and she decided to go back. She could not stay there anymore. The address was correct, but the narrator didn't want to remember it anymore. She felt that the objects were linked to a memory of a time which no longer existed. They had lost their value in the strange surroundings. And she comforted herself, she convinced herself by thinking that her present house was too small to accommodate all the old stuff. And she left the house, leaving all her family's belongings behind. And she had many other things to forget other than these things: the war, her parents, her mother, everything what she had lost. So thank you, and do like the video.